I bought a mountain cabin to escape the HOA that wrecked my marriage. And 3 weeks later, a woman I'd never met stood on my porch and told me the only road to my house, my legally purchased property, actually belonged to her. And when I pushed back, she didn't just fight me. She unleashed a war, lawyers' fake inspections, smear campaigns, financial sabotage, even a midnight assault on my gate. But she had no idea the one thing she depended on most was the one thing I owned outright. I didn't move up here to start a war. I moved here to breathe again. After 3 years of HOA hell measuring blades of grass with ruler's fines for blinds being the wrong shade of beige, citations for my garden hose being non-compliant, I was done. My ex-wife Jennifer wasn't just tired, she was defeated. I still remember her standing in our kitchen, divorce papers spread out like shrapnel. Jake, I can't live like this anymore. And honestly, I couldn't either. So when the judge stamped those papers, I walked out with the house, and the promise to myself that I'd never ever again be controlled by neighbors with clipboards. For months afterward, my sleep was a rotating playlist of Google searches. No HOA, isolated property, private land, no neighbors. My realtor Patricia gave me a long look during our first meeting and said, "Ah, you've got HOA trauma." It was the first diagnosis that ever actually made sense. She showed me a cabin deep in the Montana mountains, pine trees for miles, a wraparound porch, fresh air that didn't carry the sound of judgment. The listing said, explicitly, no HOA, no community governance, private road. That was all I needed. I moved in with boxes still half unpacked and built a fire that first night, burning every HOA violation notice I'd saved as evidence. Watching those papers curl into ash felt like an exorcism. I remember sinking into my chair, letting the quiet swallow me whole, thinking, this is it, freedom finally. I didn't know that freedom was already slipping through my fingers. The next day, as I stacked firewood, that same BMW I'd seen on the road rolled past, slow, too slow. The driver, a blonde woman in a tailored blazer, waved as if she already knew me. 3 days later, she knocked on my door with a wicker basket full of artisanal soap and locally roasted coffee. "Hi," she said, smile polished like a conference speaker. "I'm Barbara Whitman, community coordinator." I blinked. Community? What community? She stepped halfway into my personal space like she'd been invited. "Just wanted to welcome you. We're a tight-knit group up here. We take care of each other." My stomach tightened at the phrase, take care of each other. I'd heard it before, right before someone handed me a citation for having curtains too cream, not eggshell. Barbara kept talking. "Your job. You work remote, right? Fascinating. That gives you so much flexibility for community involvement." "I actually moved here to get away from that," I said. "HOA stuff, neighborhood politics. I need quiet." Her smile twitched. Microsecond. Barely noticeable. But it told me everything she didn't like that answer. "Well," she said, tone shifting there, "our responsibilities. For example, this access road, Harold, the previous owner, always coordinated maintenance and usage with us." I hesitated. "My deed says the road is private." "Oh," she chirped with a tiny patronizing pat on my arm, "deeds never tell the whole story." A chill slid down my spine, and it stayed there. Over the next week, neighbors I'd never met approached me around town, always with the same script. A mother with 2 kids said the new resort Barbara was planning would finally give her stable income. A hardware store worker told me he needed the construction job to afford his medication. A teenager said the company promised scholarships she couldn't get anywhere else. It didn't feel like coincidence. It felt like a pressure campaign. Then came the inspectors, a county health worker, an environmental specialist, someone from fire safety. Several held clipboards like weapons. One guy placed tiny orange flags in my soil as if marking the coordinates for an airstrike. They all said the same thing. We received anonymous reports. My blood ran cold. HOA déjà vu. The final straw came on a Saturday morning when Barbara herself returned, this time with a notary and a stack of papers. "Jake, I heard about all the inspections. It can be overwhelming. This," she said, tapping the top page, "is just a simple community access agreement. It'll help clarify usage patterns and reduce scrutiny. I read the first paragraph. It was dense, legalistic, vague, too vague. But I was exhausted, financially strained, emotionally triggered, and the idea of shutting down the harassment even temporarily felt like oxygen. So, I signed. She smiled, not with warmth, with victory. The harassment stopped instantly, which terrified me more. Something was wrong. I started researching easement law, mountain properties, historical usage. I called a specialized attorney named Rebecca Morrison. 3 days later, she summoned me to her office with the energy of someone who'd just won the lottery. "Jake," she said, slapping my deed onto the table, "you own everything. Not just the cabin, the entire 2-mile road, every inch, every curve." I froze. She continued, "The previous owner never owned it. It belonged to a mining company that dissolved. The road passed to the state, then to you. Legally, there is no historical usage, no easement. Barbara has 0 rights." I sat there stunned, breath caught between my teeth. "Jake," she added, lowering her voice, "her entire $50 million resort. It can't happen without your road." For the first time since moving here, I felt something strange. Power. I went home, posted signs, "Private road, permission required, trespassing enforced." I charged Barbara's BMW a $25 daily usage fee because it wasn't about the money. It was about making one thing absolutely clear: this is my property. Barbara called within the hour. Her tone wasn't friendly anymore. It was controlled, clipped, shaking with rage she couldn't quite hide. "Jake, we need to talk. There are misunderstandings." A few hours later, she showed up with 3 corporate lawyers. They spread documents across my table like they were preparing to dissect me. Historical usage, one said. Public necessity, another added. Community reliance, a third chimed in. Then they dropped the bomb. They'd filed an injunction in court to force access. The judge, who clearly knew Barbara, granted it. Just like that, with a swing of a gavel. I wasn't just furious, I was crushed. For the first time, the thought crept in. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I really am the stubborn, uncooperative, socially broken guy my ex-wife said I was. Maybe I should just let them have the road. That night I stared at my silent cabin, drowning in shame, doubt, and the weight of everyone hating me. I almost packed my bags, almost drove down the mountain and never looked back. But the next morning, Rebecca called. "Jake, I found something. Get here, now." She exposed the flaw so big it destroyed their entire case. Because the road was once owned by a corporation, not a private homeowner, Barbara could never claim easement. Her entire argument was built on a false premise. The judge was forced to reverse the injunction. Barbara lost everything in one blow, publicly, humiliatingly. And that's when she snapped. She called me at midnight, sobbing, screaming, accusing me of destroying her family. She had personally guaranteed $2.3 million in loans. If the resort died, she would lose her house, her savings, her kids' future. I should have felt sympathy, but after the next week I felt nothing but horror. She hacked my work email. She created fake complaints to my clients. She filed false credit reports that froze my bank accounts. She called my elderly parents, pretending to be a concerned neighbor, implying I was a danger to myself and others. Then she escalated further. One night I heard metal clanking, voices, flashlights. Barbara arrived with hired men carrying bolt cutters in my driveway, claiming emergency community authority. I stood at my gate, phone in hand, shaking. "This is illegal. This is my land." She leaned in so close I could smell the peppermint gum she always chewed. "You're alone, Jake. No one believes you. No one's coming." Her voice was low, cold, convincing. And when the bolt cutters snapped through the metal, something inside me cracked. Not from fear, though there was plenty of that, but from clarity. Because while she thought she was breaking my defenses, she didn't know I'd been documenting everything. The calls, the threats, the hacks, the false reports, her men destroying my gate, all captured on camera, all time-stamped, all backed up. I wasn't just a man fighting a neighbor. I was a man building a federal case. Rebecca arrived with FBI Special Agent Rebecca Torres the next morning. Torres flipped through my evidence with an expression that shifted from interest to concern to absolute certainty. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, "you're describing federal crimes, wire fraud, identity theft, extortion, coordinated harassment across state lines. This is no longer a civil dispute." Barbara's fate was sealed. The final showdown happened at the community meeting she'd organized to publicly condemn me. I stood at the back of the room as she took the stage, pointing dramatically toward me. "That man," she said, "is a danger to this community." The doors opened. FBI agents walked in. "Barbara Whitman, Agent Torres announced you are under federal investigation for cybercrime, extortion, and conspiracy." Barbara's face collapsed, then twisted, then exploded into a meltdown so public and so unhinged that every phone in the room recorded her downfall. "It's my road," she screamed as agents cuffed her. "He ruined everything. He destroyed my family." She kept screaming my name as they dragged her out the door. And just like that, the mountain went quiet again. I walked back to my cabin past the road that was finally undeniably, unchallengedly mine. No fireworks, no celebration, just the kind of silence you earn, not the kind you run to. I didn't win because I was stronger. I won because this time I refused to run. Sometimes the only way to protect your freedom is to fight harder than the people trying to take it.